Hi, it is Sarah with Yoga for Classrooms, and thank you for joining me for this conversation about calming corners. Today, we are going to talk all things calming corners. We're going to talk about why calming corners matter. We're going to talk about what they are and how you can get started using them right away in your school or home. These are great for classrooms, but they also work at home too. So whether you're an educator or a parent, I think you'll find this information useful. We can even implement these in after school programs. We can really implement them anywhere. So I think that you're going to like this conversation today. So let's get started on why calming corners. Why are calming corners helpful for our young people? And that's a pretty obvious answer. We know our children come to us with really complex emotions. They have really big and complex feelings oftentimes. However, it's not automatic that identifying and being able to regulate those emotions happens. That's a learned behavior, both identification and the regulation of them. So with that, we want to make sure we are helping our young people to learn those skills so that they can utilize them as needed. There was a really neat research study done by Dr. Brene Brown, and she surveyed 7,000 people. And of those 7,000 people, on average, people could only identify 3 emotions as they're actually feeling them. And those were happy, sad, and angry. But we know we feel many more emotions than that. And effectively using calming corners can really help our young people learn how to identify those emotions at a young age so that they carry that tool with them into adulthood and beyond. We also know, like we said, that these are learned behaviors. So we have to teach our children these things if we expect them to know how to do it. So a calming corner allows them to have a designated space with the sole intent of being a safe space to feel those big emotions and then to regain that emotional control. So it not only teaches kids ways to really regulate, but it also helps them to better understand and identify their emotions. We're giving them a safe place to do all of that. So like we always say, this gives them a tool for their tool belt that we know they'll use for many, many years to come. We can't expect it to be done right away, though. They don't come with that tool naturally. We have to help them to learn that tool. So let's make sure we understand exactly what they are. We've talked about why they're important. It's giving those safe spaces for our young people to learn to identify and regulate their emotions. But now let's talk about what they are. So essentially, all it is a specific place in the home, in the school, wherever it is, where kids can go to regulate their emotions. So that's really all it is. People often think that it has to look a certain way or has to include certain items, and that's really not true. We will talk about some items you can include in your calming corners, but I have seen calming corners work with truly nothing but a designated space, not a single item in there. I also worked at a school where we only put towels down to really, identify where the area was, but they were old recycled towels we found, and that's it. So these can really work with or without a lot of items in them. But again, remember, the important part is that it's a safe space for our young people to go. Ideally, we want this to be in a corner or in a quiet area of the classroom or of the home so that students feel that sense of safety in that area. If it's right in the middle or you feel like people are watching you, that doesn't always feel very conducive for that safety. So if possible, kind of out of the way, in a corner, in a place that doesn't get a lot of traffic would be ideal. Now, like I said, we'll talk in a minute about things you can include in your safe space, but remember, it doesn't have to include anything specific. However, there are a couple of things that we want to keep in mind as we implement safe spaces that do need to be in place or they won't be effective. And the first one is that the calming corner can never be punitive. Okay. It's never meant to be negative. It's never meant to be a timeout spot. I know lots of classrooms and lots of homes have take a break spots or timeout chairs, those types of things. While those might be effective for some people, that is not the same thing as a calming corner. The number one important aspect of a calming corner is that it is not punitive and you're not in trouble. I once had a teacher who thought they were implementing calming corners well. And then one day I overheard her talking to a caregiver about their child. And she was expressing how many times that day the kid had to go to the calming corner. So you can see there that then it was a negative thing. It was the teacher reporting back to the parents as if the child had had a really tough day and had all these issues that resulted in them attending the calming corner. And we don't want it to be seen like that, or it won't be effective. Our kids then sense that it's punitive, sense that it's negative, and will be afraid to utilize it in the way that it's meant to be. So never, ever negative. The other important piece is that it's never forced. So again, like a take a break spot, you might often say, Susie, I need you to go take a break. And that's forced. That is seen as punitive. And that's a take a break or timeout type situation. With a calming corner, it's never that way. Now, when the calming corner is first implemented, we might need to remind our young people that it's an option, that it's a tool they have. So you can give them the choice. Hi, Susie, I see that you're really starting to get upset. Do you think the calming corner might be something that you want to try? You know, that sort of thing. So giving that simple reminder is different. But if we force it, again, not going to be effective for what this is meant to be. I often have caregivers and teachers ask if children will misuse this type of resource, meaning will they take advantage of it? Will they often say they need to go just to maybe escape whatever is happening? And while that may be a concern for some students who are exhibiting some escape type behaviors, excuse me, overall, that's really not a issue with calming corners, because typically we only have students stay in calming corners about 5 minutes. So it's not this escape from the classroom. It's not an escape from the assignment they were working on. It's really a pretty quick reset. And again, once you have implemented this and your students and your children are familiar with it, they really know how to use it. And I've never seen many issues with it being misused in that way. So make sure that you do set parameters like time and that sort of thing, especially at first. However, we really don't often see that children misuse it as long as they understand the expectations. You can use different timers. I had those sand timers that you could put into the calming corner to help students understand how much time they had there. The only problem with that is sometimes students need differing amounts of time depending on what big feelings they're having, what's going on. So I hate to be too prescriptive about how much time they can spend, because we do want it to be effective and a tool that students can really benefit from. However, if you see some misuse, you are certainly able to add some of those parameters that might help in that way. All right, so that is what calming corners are. Now let's talk about how we can use them both at home and at school. So like we said, really all we have to do is find a quiet and safe space in our classroom or in our homes. And then we want to introduce it to our young people when they're regulated, right? This is not something we want to introduce to a student or a child when they're already dysregulated, when they're already feeling those big feelings, and we start trying to explain that they can go to a calming corner. That won't work. So this needs to be introduced to them preventatively, introduced as a tool we have in our home or our classroom that can be utilized as needed. Like I mentioned at the beginning, you might have to give some reminders that it's there, but we want to introduce it to the whole class, or if you're introducing this at home, introduce it to your children before they might need it so that they understand. It's also really helpful if as adults we model using it. I often would say to students, I think I need a minute in the calming corner, and that can be really effective as well. When you are deciding what is included in the calming corner, I think it can be really neat to give your child or your students choice in what's in there. Are there things that they feel like would be beneficial when they start to feel those big feelings? That's helping them identify tools they have. It's helping them understand what helps them feel better. And that choice is really, really powerful. Now, if that's not possible, you can include a variety of things and then let the child choose what they use when they get there. However, like I said at the beginning, you really don't have to have a ton of items. I'm going to show you some that I liked to use and that were really successful for me. But if you don't have these items, you don't have to. The other cool thing to do is to try to replicate what this looks like at school at home. So if you know that your child's school has calming corners, ask them what's in there and try to replicate that at home. That can be a really powerful way to really add that consistency and that repetition that can help our students to know how to use these and to know what they can use them for. Obviously, it's also important when we think about developing these calming corners that we are age appropriate. I've worked with high schools that implemented these types of rooms, and obviously the materials and the way it was presented is much different with high schoolers than it might be with 4-year-olds. We also typically can offer more choice, more things in the rooms the older our students are, because they have a little bit more of that ability to appropriately use it developmentally. They just have more self-control in that way typically. So, all right, let's talk what to include in the calming corners. I have some examples I want to show you of things that worked for me. The first thing that always works really well is a breathing ball. This is one of our Yoga for Classroom signature items. It helps our students to take those big, deep breaths using the breathing ball. It's also a little bit of a manipulative. It's fun to play with. But this is helpful for our students who are feeling those big emotions that might be angry or starting to really get that out of control feeling inside our body. We know those big deep breaths can really help us to regulate, and having a tool to remind us to take those big deep breaths is super helpful. So breathing ball would be a great tool for really, truly all ages, as long as they've been taught how to use it. So in Yoga for Classrooms, this is one of the things we teach and we use throughout the program. And so then to have one also available in the calming corner is a great tool. Another tool that can be super helpful are these breathing bottles. What I would typically do is have students make these, and I would let them take one home, and then we would keep one in the classroom in the calming corner so they knew how to use it. And again, that consistency from school and home was super helpful. There are lots of ways to make these. We usually used glitter, glue, and water, and just recycled plastic bottles. So they're not really hard, but if you've ever used them before, they are really relaxing. You can shake them up and then watch all the glitter fall. It's a really good calming tool. I've seen these made with all sorts of other things. You can put little figurines in there. You can do all sorts of fun stuff, but this is a super budget friendly, easy way to do it. This costs like almost nothing, and you can have that available. Again, you don't have to do it for the whole class, but that was just a fun activity we did when we learned about how to use these. We would make them, again, let the students take them home, but then I just kept one in the calming corner. So that's a great idea. And you'll notice with these kind of tools, they're not likely to be misused. They're really good tools for helping regulate, but there's not a lot of ways they can misuse these. Now, of course, they could throw this or that sort of thing, but again, when introduced, you really don't typically have a lot of issues with that if they really know how to use them. Other things I love including are our yoga for classrooms and yoga for children cards, because these are really meant to be able to be utilized with our students. They're so easy to use. Of course, teachers often use them, but they can pull a card and do it themselves too. So we have our yoga for classrooms cards that are most often used in our classrooms, but we also have our yoga for children cards that are great as well, and have a little bit more of a variety of things for our young people that don't have to be as classroom based. So those can be helpful as well. And what I usually did in my calming corners is I put them on rings like this so that students could pretty quickly flip through, find one that might sound like what would help them right now, and then they could do that in the calming corner. So these are those yoga for children cards, just on a ring. Again, super cheap. You can buy like a pack of 20 of these for like $2 at Target, but it makes them really accessible and easy to use. What I typically did, the blue cards and the yoga for classroom cards, are all the breathing techniques, which are usually the best in our calming corner. So I would put all the blue cards together and leave those in the calming corners for our students to retrieve as needed. Great way to help them learn those techniques on their own. I also love children's literature, so I often included books in my calming corners. What I tried to do is include at least one book for each of the big feelings we have. Angry Octopus is a great relaxation story about feeling angry, but it also aligns with our yoga for classrooms breathing cards, because this really walks you through taking deep breaths and having a mindful moment. So it really aligns nicely. So Angry Octopus was always a good one. I also love these I'm books. The I'm worried and I'm sad were always good ones. Again, that way we have anger, we have sad, we have worry. That just gives them that choice. And remember what we said at the beginning. Our goal is that they're learning to better identify their emotions, to really expand beyond happy, sad, mad kind of thing. And so having that choice of book to identify is super helpful. With that, you can also include like a feelings wheel that gives them choices to help identify what they're feeling. I love the mood meter personally. It gives a lot of choice and really helps deepen their understanding of the different emotions. If you don't want to include different feelings books, you can do one like the Color Monster, which includes all the different feelings within the book. This is a popular one because it's a pop-up book. You can see it. And so students really like this. There is always the concern if your students are going to the calming corner with really big feelings, something like this could be a little too easy to rip. So depending on the age and stage of your young people, this may not be the best option, but if it is, kids love this book. I use it for all sorts of things. And then there's also all sorts of books that help them walk through mindful breathing. My Magic Breath is one of my favorites. So that would be a good one too. It gives them the opportunity to read a story, but again, taking those deep breaths as they go. That one pairs beautifully with our breathing ball. The other things you might include, again, depending on the developmental level of your young people, are things like journals or paper or crayons. Often coloring or drawing or writing is an effective tool in a calming corner. So if that is something that you think might be impactful for your students, you can include things like that. Remember, overall, less is probably more in these situations. It doesn't have to be filled with super expensive items. Comfort and safety is really key here. So maybe you have nothing except a comfy pillow and some breathing cards or something like that. That might be, especially if you're just getting started, just the best way to get started is simply and without overstimulating our young people as they use it. Developmentally, maybe like a stuffed animal can be helpful, something that gives that sense of safety that they can hug on to, or that sort of things. Sometimes we include other sensory items. I was always careful not to over offer sensory items. We have all those fidgets and things like that, but I found those are more likely to be misused than just these tools that are truly just to help with breathing and regulation. So again, depending on your students, those things might be helpful. Another tool that is super helpful depending on the needs of your students is noise canceling headphones. That often gives that sense of safety and really allows them to regulate. We know a lot of our children who have big feelings or what looks like meltdowns is actually due to overstimulation. And so giving them that opportunity to remove the stimulation that might be happening in the classroom can be really powerful. So I hope that gives you some ideas of what you can put into your calming corners to get started. Again, remembering often less is more. The real idea is that we're giving them a safe and comfortable spot to go to help manage and regulate their emotions. So, with that, a few final tips with this. We want to make sure that we're creating expectations at the beginning. So, we want to make sure that we're helping them understand how to use it. When we can make connections for them, that also helps. So, for example, if you see a student go to the calming corner because they are starting to get angry at another student, and when they choose to leave the calming corner, you might quietly, one on one, check in with them and say, can you tell me about how you felt when you went to the calming corner versus how you feel now? We're helping make those connections for them to better understand their emotions, which is really powerful. And remember, that's truly the point of them. That will also help for them to utilize that tool outside of the classroom because they're going to realize what they did to help them go from angry to more content or that sort of thing. Think through what environments are hard for your child. So if you're a caregiver and you're wanting to implement this at home or in other places, what are difficult times for your kids? Maybe it's the car. Maybe it's when you go on vacation or when you visit family at a different home. If so, create a calming corner on the go that has a couple of items that they can take with them to again replicate that idea and help them in those situations that are most likely to be difficult for them. That replication will be really, really powerful. And I think you'll really see the self-regulation and emotion identification increase as we create that replication and that ability for them to use this in multiple ways, multiple locations. So with that, I wish you the best. Let us know if this works for you. Let us know what parts you loved and what parts you tweaked to fit your environment. We are so grateful for all you do to serve your young people, and we hope that you find Calming Corners impactful for the young people that you have in your life. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.